everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another painting tutorial, and today we are painting my favourite gold recipe. Yes, this is a very specific video on, well, how to paint gold. Now I'll be using Oberyn the Bold from the Severin Steelheart's Champions set for the Warhammer Underworlds. It's a very, very cool model, and it's the one which has a lot of gold on it, and it makes it quite easy to demonstrate how I like to do this. So without further ado, I'm going to jump straight in. I've primed this one in Wraithbone, but it doesn't really matter because this gold recipe works regardless of what primer you have. And the colour I'm going to be using first is Retributor Armour. Now I'm going to be getting this all over all of his armour. Just like this. Now I often find that painting Retributor Armour over the top of Wraithbone or indeed Grey Seer, you get a much quicker coverage. So you don't actually, sometimes you don't need to do two thin coats over a much brighter undercoat. Now, of course, you could spray the whole model with a Retributor Armour primer, but I don't like to do that because, well, as you know, I like to paint all my models with as much contrast paint as possible. And contrast paint over the top of metallics doesn't create a matte finish. It creates a slightly metallic looking contrast paint, which is really nice, but it doesn't work on stuff like cloth. So the reason why I like to do Wraithbone or Grey Seer, even on a model that is predominantly metallic, such as this Hammers of Sigmar Liberator Oberyn the Bold, is because I can get a really nice smooth finish with the Retributor Armour by just thinning it down with a couple of parts of water, not very much at all. It means that the slightly trickier aspects of painting these guys, such as cloaks and white details and various things like that, I don't have to spend time relayering with Wraithbone or Grey Seer in order to then use contrast paint. Which is why I like to do it this way. There's an argument, of course, to be made that potentially a predominantly metallic miniature, you may save time by not using majority of contrast paint. However, I don't believe that to be true, which is why I do it this way. It also just gives, particularly over Wraithbone, a really lovely kind of base hue to the Retributor Armour. I need to thin a little bit more down, so I'm just going to grab some of this, add a little bit of water. There we go. with that Retributor Armour applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to shade our gold. And we're going to do this by creating a 1-to-1 mix of Fyreslayer Flesh and Contrast Medium. And by making a 1-to-1 mix, we take one brush load of Fyreslayer Flesh. There we go. Actually just grab a tiny little bit more. There we go. And then we give the brush a quick wash. Then we take a brush load of Contrast Medium and we mix them together on the palette just like this. Got enough here just to do a leg, for example, and we're just going to get this all over the gold. Now we are looking to shade it, so we're mostly looking for this to get really good coverage in the recesses. However, what we don't want to do is massively overload our brush, because if we get too much on there at once, we'll end up having these really dark spots. And even worse, what can happen is if you have even just that little bit too much more than that, is that gravity can take over and it can run a lot of this Retributor Armour towards the bottom of the details. When that happens, it will dry in a nice big bubble, and if you get that bubble, it's very hard to kind of rescue it, because it becomes like a thick coat, a thick layer on the model. It becomes very, very noticeable because it creates a texture. So you just want to be very careful here with how much you're putting on. You just want to be very conscious of any kind of dark pools. And every so often just give the model a little spin round. One, to make sure you haven't missed any sections, like that little section there that I just missed, but also just to make sure it's not pooling up anywhere. And the big offenders for such as things like this are these kind of corners on leg plates, particularly on the Stormcast Eternals. So we're just going to carry on until we run out of this Fyreslayer Flesh on the palette. You never know, it might go the whole distance, but if it doesn't, we just make sure that we've got to a decent stopping place before we mix some more, rather than, for example, being halfway down a leg, stopping to mix some more, because in that time it'll dry, and that's where you get those kind of tide marks and lines, those drying lines, by going over it once again with contrast paint. Now in this instance that's usually okay, because, well, with gold, particularly this gold recipe, we are going to be relayering it. However, it's good practice at this point to just try and avoid it. And it's really good practice to learn this technique for when you come to do large coats of contrast paint all over certain sections, and you're just using contrast paint straight on the model, rather than, for example, over the top of a metallic like this that you're going to inevitably relayer, such as, you know, coloured Space Marine army, like the Blood Angels or the Dark Angels. Or indeed, for Stormcast fans out there, something like the Celestial Vindicators or the Tempest Lords. You might just about have enough paint. Oh, it's going to be very close. with that done, this is where the magic now happens. What we do is we take some thinned down Retributor Armour and we use this to relayer all of the flat armour panels to make it really nice and bright and warm. So for example, just around here on the chest, like that. However, rather than doing this on any of the kind of tiny details, we just ignore those, because that way you get even more contrast out of the highlights when you apply them after this stage. So we add that there, and just here as well, like so. The basic rule of thumb here is you only really tackle sections that you can get a small layer brush into comfortably, well, reasonably comfortably. Some areas are a little bit bigger. So for example, just here on the shoulder pad, we come round like that, but we don't then add it to that little edge in there. We leave that just for the moment. Well, we leave that for when we're going to do the highlights. Same around here. We add this like that. See how it really starts to make all of that gold really pop and really shine. So with that all done, what we're then going to do is we're going to highlight all of the gold, because we're going to kind of get all of those edges that we haven't brightened back up, and you'll see what I mean from the previous take about how we don't have to do absolutely relayer every single section with that Retributor Armour. So the highlight that we can do is we're going to make a mix. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 1 part of Retributor Armour. So we're just going to get a nice big dollop of it like that. 1 part Retributor Armour to 2 parts Stormhost SIlver. So we're going to go 1 and 2. Then we're going to grab a little bit of water. I'm going to add that in. I'm going to mix it together to make this really lovely bright white gold. It looks somewhat like that. I'm going to wash the brush. I'm going to swap to a much smaller brush. Now I like to use the Artist Opus Series M, size 00, but of course other brands are available. And then what we're going to do is just take a small amount of that on our brush I'm going to start edge highlighting. So I'm just going to start around the gorget here. Just like that. We want to pick out all of the little rivets. And we want to pick out every single edge. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/Warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/Warhipster. Alternatively, you can now become a YouTube channel member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, exactly like these awesome folks have done. And if you just want to shoot me a little thanks just because you really love this video, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.